was a cold, wet Friday morning when Simon decided to go to the forest. He hadn't been to the forest in a long time, and that was strange because the forest was a very important place to Simon. It was where he spent a lot of his time when he was growing up, playing with his friends, taking the dog for a walk, sometimes to escape having to do his chores, or when he had an argument with his brothers, it was a refuge, somewhere he could go to escape from the people around him. Even now, when he was 30 years old, when he was stressed, he would go to the forest, walk the familiar trails, the paths that he knew so well. It didn't happen often, but even now, after all these years, there were still times when he would go for a walk and find himself lost. But he knew if he kept walking in one direction, eventually he would come to a path he knew. The park was large, but it wasn't that large. After a while, a soft mizzle came down, coating him with thin gossamer strands of rain, the water clinging to his coat, covering his glasses. He hated getting his glasses wet. It was such an annoyance. He thought he heard a noise coming from a tree just up ahead. And as he looked up, he saw in amongst the trees a small, yellow-colored dog. He didn't recognize the dog. It wasn't his. It wasn't the family dog. It wasn't any of his neighbors' dogs. And he knew a lot of the people who came to walk here. The dog approached him, but showed no signs of any threat, no sign of any danger. The dog sniffed his shoes and looked up at him, expectantly. Simon looked around, wondered where this gorgeous little dog had come from. Its owner must be nearby. You couldn't leave a small pup like this alone in a forest. Simon looked around, raised his voice and shouted, "Hello! Hello! Hello!" There was no other sound but the birds in the trees, the rain hitting against them, a soft breeze washed against his face. He looked down, and the pup was looking up at him, one ear up, one ear down. Simon looked down and said, "Where's your master, boy? You can't be here alone. Let's go for a walk and see what is happening. Simon walked towards the point where he first saw the dog. He figured he would, as best he could, retrace the steps. Perhaps he might find the dog's owner. He set off through the trees, swiping briars and low branches away from him, out of his way, stepping around the large patches of muddy, dug-up earth along the trail. Some people came through the forest on horses, and when the rains came, the mud was thick right up over his shoes. He jumped from side to side, not wanting to get any dirt on his shoes. Meanwhile, the pup just walked right on through the mud. He didn't care. He was happy just to have someone beside him. Simon walked on for 10-15 minutes, looking around, listening for sounds of cracking branches or footsteps or other voices within the forest. But there was nothing. There was still just the breeze flowing through the trees, the bird song, and the noise of this little dog running along beside him. It had been years since Simon had had his own dog. He couldn't just take this little dog home with him, could he? That didn't seem right. There must be somebody out there. Somebody looking for this little pup. For the first time, he knelt down and called for the pup to come over to him. The dog looked at him from a distance of 4 or 5 yards and slowly edged his way towards Simon, not sure what was going to happen, if he was going to be hit or hugged. Slowly, Simon reached out his hand, just holding it steady as the pup came over and gently licked the tips of Simon's fingers. Simon held his hands out to show that there was no threat and said, "Come on, boy, come here." And the pup came into his reach, and Simon gave him a quick pat on the head and down his back. He searched around the neck for a collar or any sign that this little dog belonged to somebody else, but there was nothing there. The dog looked up into his face with his tongue hanging out, and what you would swear was a smile on his face. You know the way dogs look when they're happy. And Simon said, "I guess I'm taking you home today." With a grunt, he got back up onto his feet and walked through the forest with the dog walking by his side. They walked out to the main gate where Simon had his car parked. He opened the boot and looked down and said, "Jump up, boy." The dog looked at him, not knowing what to do. Simon said to him, "Have you never been in a car before, boy? Come on, jump up. But the pup still just looked at him, not having a clue what was going on. So Simon bent down and gently picked up the dog, moved the coat aside in the boot of his car, and set him down and said, "Okay, boy, we're going home."